But I want all of you to think about Memorial Day for a moment. And I want to share a story with you. One of the greatest days of my lives. One of the greatest days of my life. I don't think I'm going to have multiple lives. One of the greatest days of my life I got to spend on the beaches of Normandy in France. We had a tour guide. We spent the entire day with that tour guide driving around. The terrain is nearly identical to what it was in June of 1944, June 6, 1944, when we stormed the beaches. You can stand up on those heights still to this day. You can see the Nazi pillboxes. The guns are very often still inside of those pillboxes. You can look down at the cliffs that American soldiers had to climb. And if you are fortunate enough to spend a day there like I was, it will be impossible for you to ever believe that America is anything other than the greatest force for freedom that has existed in the history of the world. Because you had 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids stepping off into the surf on that June day into hails of gunfire fired by actual Nazis. Not Nazis who say things you disagree with on social media. Not Nazis who have different political opinions than you. Actual, real, flesh and blood Nazis with machine guns firing wildly, indiscriminately, killing people left and right as they stepped off of those boats. And when you see those cliffs, and when you see those beaches, it truly will become impossible for you not to stand in abject and unbelievable honor in front of all of those places where these men gave their lives. And if you go to the memorial grounds and you see all of those white headstones arrayed across this beautiful landscape and see all of those guys who gave their lives, you will be in disbelief over the staggering amount of bravery they showed. I want to tell you a story I think is emblematic of that bravery. A lot of the guys in the 101st Airborne trained as paratroopers. Just want you to think about this as you go into your weekend. All of you have fantastic times with your friends and family. Just want you to think about this story. A lot of those paratroopers, a lot of those kids who signed up to jump out of airplanes and parachute into Europe to fight Nazis, the very first time they'd ever been in an airplane, they jumped out of it. Just want you to think about that for a minute. I was talking with my dad recently, and he said, your grandma and your grandpa never ever got on an airplane. And I was named after Clay Travis. My grandfather grew up in Kentucky, Muhlenberg County, dirt poor, worked in coal mines, ended up coming down to Nashville, 8th grade education, dropped out of school after that, came down to Nashville, ended up working in the DuPont plant in Old Hickory, lived his entire life, never got in an airplane. It was his generation. A lot of these kids had never been in airplanes before. Very first time they ever went up in an airplane, they jumped out of it and parachuted to the ground. No matter how old you are, I want you to think about that for a minute. If you can remember the first time you ever got on an airplane or the first time you were aware of getting on an airplane. For a lot of you kids, some of you probably can't even remember the first time you ever got on an airplane. But at some point, you probably looked out the window and you were probably a little bit scared about being in an airplane flying anywhere. Imagine if you had never been in an airplane before. You were 18 or 19 years old. You'd grown up on a farm. You suddenly are training to fight Nazis. And the very first time you go up in an airplane, you jump out of it. These men were and are, some of them are still alive, unbelievable heroes. And their bravery is truly staggering. I love that story, though. You've never been in an airplane before. You take off into the sky. And the very first time you've ever been in an airplane, you jump out of it with a parachute, training to go overseas and fight the Nazis in Europe. Our soldiers are amazing. Their stories and their sacrifices are legion. I just want you to think about that a little bit as you go into your weekend. And maybe share it with your boys or your girls. Certainly give thanks for all the freedoms that we have every single day to live in the greatest country that has ever existed. And I hope that many of you will also have the opportunity one day to stand on those overlooks and stare down at the beaches of Normandy and realize what true bravery and heroism looks like.